So the why we are here is I mean, yeah, it's pretty loaded, but a big part of it is sort of taking a look what I'm seeing in the businesses that I'm working with right now, what I'm seeing in the world. What Jen and I sort of can fall into rabbit holes talking about is just like the state of leadership in the world today and where we're at. And so, what I've been called to sort of create and in order to sort of like meet this need that I'm seeing in the world, I'll talk about the need in a minute, is really just an opportunity, a platform, some groups to help individuals, to help professionals, to help business owners really create some space to take a look at their leadership and basically just be better leaders. Because I don't know about you guys, when I do look around the world, I think our leadership is a little bit in chaos. And so that is the why. And that, when I look at global leadership, when I look at organizations and some of the generational conflict that we're seeing and hearing, it leaves me thinking like, okay, what's going on? Like, how do we fix this? So that's sort of the why, is that like, is what is happening to leadership these days? Like, what's going on? And so that is sort of just like the impetus. What do you like? Do you guys see that too? What are you guys seeing, noticing, feeling around sort of leadership as a whole? What are you noticing in the world and businesses? Like, what are you telling yourself in general about leadership? I'll put you on the spot, Ryan.
Yeah, no problem. I kind of concur with your agree with your comments. Like I think there's this piece of people who have been either put into leadership roles or um, that don't know how to do it. Like to me, leadership is a muscle, and it needs to be trained and developed and practiced. And it's like I'm not gonna play a sport if I'm not ready for it, kind of thing. And I think that's what I see a lot of businesses is leaders who not really knowing how to lead. And so I think it's a disservice to them for sure that they don't know how to do it, and then disservice to the business as well.
Yeah,
I don't know what I'm
yeah.
saying.
For sure, that people just like sort of land in those roles without the proper training. Um, Elaine Hartland, thoughts on leadership?
Um, well, I mean, I think there's leadership in in a lot of ways, right? I mean, there's company leaders as we're kind of more used to talking about, but then there's leaders in the world in terms of like politicians, and other influencers, and I think that the, I think that at one time we had leaders that were certainly from a political and global perspective, a lot of times, and there were lots of exceptions, but sort of true leaders, and we're I think we're struggling in that now, and we're getting people who are leading, but they're leading for the wrong reasons, or they have um, their own agendas, and so they're very maybe they're very good at rallying support, but it's kind of taking us from a social perspective down the wrong path. So I mean, Trump is obviously a huge example, and I think that set in motion a lot of issues that we're now seeing with there's and I think that some of these things trickle their way back up into the big corporations. I think the small businesses probably have a lot of people who have the better intentions, behind, like the people that I deal with and see running small businesses have, the best of intentions around providing good products, good services, supporting their customers. And I think that all gets much more complicated and convoluted and lost in larger companies and in politicians and politics.
Yeah, I agree. Agree. The agendas become different at politics, from politics to corporations, I would say. Politicians lead from a place of wanting to preserve their leadership versus doing what's best for the business, like what's best, sorry, for the population. Leaders, depending on the size of the business, I think they do get influenced on things like going public or securing cash flow versus maybe doing what's best for their people. But so that's at like a 10,000 foot level if we start at the global level. But Elaine, like, do you consider yourself a leader in your role?
In my role right now, I think I did not intend to see myself as a leader, but it's sort of becoming that because I'm working with a team who on a project that none of us have ever done before.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm getting a certification in this. It's a medical research project, basically. And so I'm being the sort of the guide.
The facilitator.
Yeah.
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 But I was going to say, just for like your previous question about leadership, sorry, my dog is going to be interrupting me.
No problem.
I work also in the public library, and I've seen like so much turnover and people being put into new roles, coming back to roles that they were not in. And so it's just sort of feels like chaos in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great way to describe, I think, what we're seeing like at the lower level is like people are scrambling for talent or they're scrambling with tight resources. And so they're trying to just make the best of their situations, but not necessarily making the best decisions for the organization or the people in it, just sort of operating from that scarcity mindset. So anyway, I know personally, like when I start thinking about leadership and I start thinking about these constraints, the global leadership and leaders who aren't making decisions necessarily with the best interest of their people in mind, like I get frustrated and I'm like, this needs to change. And then I remember my favorite little quote. And so I'm just going to pull that up here. And so it's adopting this thumbs up if you're looking at the quote. If you can see, yeah, okay. So everybody was reading it there. So the quote is, yesterday I was clever and I wanted to change the world. You know, I want to see leadership change. I want to see businesses change, but today I'm wise and I'm changing myself. And so really adopting this belief that like, if we're going to see any major impact in the world or change or create any change in the world, that we really have to start with ourselves, and that really how we show up, how we decide to evolve and grow and learn is what's going to be best for serving the world. And so how do you do that? You know, as Heartland knows, as being sort of a former client, a lot of my clients are very successful because they sort of engage in 3 practices, I would say. And those practices are working with a mentor. So someone who's helped them by sharing sort of the experiences that that person has been through in their own careers, that a mentor really will share through their own key learnings and sort of not necessarily give advice. Like mentors, they might give advice, but a better way for someone to mentor is to really just share what happened when they experienced that opportunity or that challenge. The second thing that I see successful leaders engaging in is working with a coach, such as myself. And the reason they work with coaches is really to be accountable to themselves. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in just a minute. But the third thing that I see really successful people doing, and Heartland, you've been a part of this, is being a part of peer-to-peer forum groups, organizations, small groups where business owners or leaders can get together and sort of share their best practices. And it's been through my experience of working, I've been very blessed since I was 21 to get to work with some very successful people and sort of have watched what they've been doing. And that it's through having those structures in place that they are able to continuously work on themselves, to continuously grow, to continuously adapt, achieve their goals, overcome their, let's call it like blind spots. Harlan, how would you describe your experience with coaching versus being a part of a peer group in the past? What were some of the similarities? What were some of the differences? What do you think you really got out of sort of those two experiences for yourself?
Well, so I think a fundamental difference is being part of a peer group, at least, and there are different peer groups with different kind of philosophies, I suppose. But the one that you and I are referring to is focused on providing experience shares, which means not providing advice on how to do things. So it's here's how I solved that problem, and here's what worked for me, rather than here's what I think you should do, or you need to do this, and then you need to do that. So it's not telling somebody what to do, it's telling them what, and it has to be a personal experience share. It can't be, well, this is what my friend did or something like that. So that was much different than the coaching, which is, hey, Carolyn, tell me how to do this, like fix this problem for me and give me the answer.
But I did not do that. Nice try. Reframe that for everybody.
I just think if you're paying attention.
I'm paying attention. It was more like in coaching, the difference between peer groups and coaching. In coaching, Heartland would come and say, this is a challenge. And I would say, let's talk about it. What does good look like? What does bad look like? What's getting in your way? And that the real sort of meat behind coaching is that you will take action towards the thoughts and ideas that are meaningful and important to you. That in a true peer coaching relationship, every once in a while, I do like to give my advice. Let's call a spade, right, Harlan? But honestly, truthfully, coaching is a powerful practice because people will take action on ideas that they create far faster and more successfully than being told what to do. So Aaron and Pam, welcome. So happy to see you guys. What we were talking about is, I started really light talking about like leadership in the world today and how it's just like in total chaos. Everybody agrees. And that to me, what I believe the solution is it's not so much like getting out there and trying to change the world. It's more about like, okay, well, where do I start? And we need to start with ourselves. And that three sort of practices that I have seen experienced successful leaders, business owners adopt over their careers are working with a mentor, being a part of a peer-to-peer group. So things like EO, McKay CEO forum groups, YPO, there's a whole bunch of them out there, and working with a coach. That really people that value professional development, that value really wanting to take their careers or their businesses to that next level, have those three people on their team. People that really want to dial up sort of how they show up as leaders, have those structures in place to support them to grow professionally. So Heartland was just talking a little bit about his experience of being a part of a peer-to-peer group and then coaching. So that's just to give you guys a quick synopsis of where we are. What I want you guys to, so I'm just going to sort of switch gears here a little bit, because another part of working in one of those structures with those people is a bit of a practice of doing like a review and reset. And so when I was planning this session, I was like, I'm going to put those guys to work. Like, we're going to put them to work. Like, what does good leadership look like for you? Like, what are you proud of? What do you want to achieve in 2023? Like, I'm going to give you like a bit of a taste of some of the work that you would do if you were engaged in working with a coach or engaged in a peer-to-peer group. So I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to ask you to get a piece of paper and a pen. If you've been on a call with me before, you probably know that that should be close by anyway. Elaine, you have a piece of paper and a pen? And I'm going to guide you through a little bit of an exercise that you might experience if you were sort of engaged in sort of this practice of working with a coach or a peer-to-peer group on a regular basis. We're going to use the fact that it's November 11th, December 1st is tomorrow. Can you believe it? And do a bit of a review and reset. Awesome. I'll just give you guys one more minute to finish up. And what I'm curious about right now is like, what are you noticing about this process? What are you noticing about doing this work? You don't necessarily need to tell me like the content of what you've written down, but tell me what your feelings are about like taking the time to do this right now. What are you noticing, Pam?
I'm noticing it's hard. Yeah, just to kind of get out of the day-to-day mentality right now and actually, yeah, create that space of possibility. So I think for me, it has to be like a pretty conscious effort to carve out some time on a more routine basis outside of the house, and kind of just be a little bit more selfish with my time and let go of guilt or whatever it is that, you know, kind of hold me back from asking for what I need in that regard, to focus and have a little bit more long-term orientation in terms of my thoughts and where I want to go. And then I think just that accountability piece to it as well. So by joining some sort of like a network or a group, it's always like that accountability piece, right? You don't do the work if you're not like accountable to anyone else other than yourself sometimes. So
Totally.
That's
Totally.
what I'm thinking.
That's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I just like threw this at you guys. No preparation, nothing, no priming. It's just like, what do you want in 2023? And it's not easy. So to maybe do it in a more meaningful way when you know what might be coming and you can sort of like curate some thoughts around it would be helpful. I'm really just sort of trying to paraphrase what you said there. But yeah, and it's more fun doing it with people. Erin, what are you noticing?
I guess I'm kind of noticing also like just like common themes. It's like, you know,
And what you're writing
like,
down?
Yeah, like when we thought about, okay, you know, where were we in January? And, you know, where do you think we would be now? And now thinking about, okay, here I am. Now, where do I want to be? Like, there's a lot of commonalities. So even though I do have some good wins, it also feels like, what do I need to change? Because I haven't seen as much progress potentially. And, you know, to echo the last comment too, like, just like when you asked about the how, I literally wrote focus 3 times. It's like, just need to focus on what matters most, and kind of let go of the things maybe that don't.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right here. You don't have to talk, but I'm going to stop you because I need you to go back to your piece of paper and a pen and write down what does matter most. What are you focusing on? Write that down. And what do you need to let go of? And we're going to be quiet here for a second so that you can capture that. Okay. Heartland, thoughts, feelings, observations. What are you noticing?
Okay.
Well, first of all, it's forcing me to. I mean, I had this on my list of things I need to been wanting to do here in the next few weeks anyway, as to like planning for 2023. So this is a good start, and you know, on the one hand, I really enjoy this process, but on the other hand, I find it very frustrating. So it's kind of a little bit of love-hate. To come out of the blue like this, you know, sometimes it's just one of those things that like there's no good time. So I think just you know, you forcing us to do this now, or at least for me anyway, is you know, a good exercise, and I'm happy I do it. I'm doing it. So I feel like there's more that I need to add to this and think through, but it's a good start.
Okay, good. Elaine, what are you noticing?
For me, I think it's a very small scale and more personal, I think. And so I have been kind of like, this is sort of what I've kind of been doing. And mine is more, what I need to do is the day-to-day to get to these.
So you're clear on what you want.
Yeah.
And you've done that work.
Yeah. And so like, if we go back to the original question, kind of like, what did you set as your goal, or where were you on January 1st, 2022? What did you decide to do? What were your wins and losses? So I think I did have a plan, and I was able to do that. And now I'm making progress through this year. So I think that's good. And then sort of a year from now, what do I want to see have happened for 2023? So I think I am kind of clear about that. Yeah.
Good. But then it's the day-to-day that you think you need to raise the bar on?
Yeah, and I think like what the inner critic part of it, for me, it was like, well, I feel like I have imposter syndrome, and that's like getting the experience of doing this day to day is showing to me that I am, you know, I need to have the confidence in my knowledge and training, because that's proving that, you know, I'm going where I want to go. And so I think the communication part of it that we talked about earlier is
at the key.
Yeah.
At the core. Yeah. Great. Okay. Ryan, I'm not going to ask you in the spirit of time. Ryan's sort of our observer. So I always talk when I'm working in businesses, I'm commonly talking about, like, in order to optimize the business, or in order to optimize ourselves, it's this like sort of like this sweet spot of optimizing who we are as individuals. So knowing ourselves, that who, so to your point, Elaine, like the imposter syndrome, like knowing what your behavioral strengths are, knowing what your values are, knowing what your purpose is, like really optimizing the you in order to optimize the plan. So it's like this beautiful sort of sweet spot between optimizing the self with making sure that we are optimizing our plan. And so to me, when we can really know where we are going, who we are, and how we're going to get there, like that's coaching. That's like this action forward-looking process. And that when we can be engaging in this sort of like reflection and setting these intention on a regular basis, that's what allows us to grow as leaders. That's what allows us to grow towards what we want, either professionally or personally. And some of these other structures, having a coach, having a peer group, just is that accountability that Pam was talking about, that allows us to sort of do that purposefully. And so to me, like knowing the who, the what, the how, optimizing the being and the doing, like I think those are just different ways of saying the same thing. So I hope I'm not confusing anybody. Like that is the juice. Like the reason coaching has been so successful in the last 20, 25 years is because it goes back to this idea that like, Elaine, you own this, like you own your leadership, you own this project. And it is up to you to see the opportunities. It is up to you to know your blind spots and overcome that. But by working with a coach or being a part of a peer group, that allows us to get there that much faster. So as leaders, we're doing our own work, but then ultimately, Pam and Aaron, because you're more of a corporate world, you're taking that work and you're sharing it with the people that are around you. And that's sort of another level to leadership and knowing that and knowing what that looks like. And so I call this sort of like, what we were just talking about is like, what optimizing leadership, how do I better myself? What does that look like? But then what I want to share with you now is like, what do I sort of see as a leader's journey? Which is thumbs up if you're looking at the leader's journey. Just want to make sure. Yeah. So it's starting with this knowing of myself, starting with the optimizing of the being and the doing of myself, so that I can then go and effectively partner with others. And Elaine, like you are sort of in this space between knowing yourself, like there's this opportunity for you to double down in terms of knowing your communication style, knowing your strengths, knowing your imposter syndrome, knowing your powerful self, so that you can then go move to this place of being able to effectively partner with others. Effectively meaning know what kinds of conversations that you need to have in certain times. So in order to be able to have effective conversations with each other, we have to start with optimizing ourselves first. So when I look at this journey, it's really about starting with knowing ourselves, and then and all that goes with it, to then be able to effectively partner with others. Like that means communication, knowing what type of conversation I need to have when. And I'm not going to go deep into that, but when I say different types of conversations, it's like, are we having a coaching conversation where this person has a problem and is overcoming a challenge, or this person has an idea and wants to map out a plan? Are we having a courageous conversation whereby something in our relationship, someone got hurt and we need to sort of lean into a difficult conversation for the sake of the relationship in order to heal? Or as a friend of mine yesterday called it, close the loop on the relationship. So having a courageous conversation. Are we having a managerial conversation where we're saying, hey, I need you to do X, Y, and Z by Monday? There's no coaching, there's no courage. It's just like, this is it. This is what you got to do. So understanding the different conversations that are involved in partnering with others professionally and personally. And then that next stage of leadership development and growth is leading teams and organizations, like effectively doing what we just did now, which is like determining a vision, determining a plan to move forward, understanding what our organization's strengths and weaknesses are, and mobilizing teams around that. In a nutshell, doing what we just did 5 minutes ago in organizations, but there's so many more intricacies that are involved at that level. And so what I'm seeing with coaching and peer groups and whatnot is that it's not available to the masses enough yet. Like, our coaching packages start at like $6,000. Or when I go into an organization, like very few organizations in Canada, they are doing it in the US, but very few organizations in Canada are going to buy like 10 coaching packages for their employees. Like it's pretty expensive. So I've always been really mindful of like, how do we bring these structures, these successful structures, this thinking to more people? And so what I've come up with is this idea of a training plan called the Better Your Best, Better Your Leadership. Hold on one second here. And starting in this phase of leading yourself by creating these little performance pods in order to optimize the being and the doing for the self. And so what I envision is a few of these performance pods sort of that will be designed for different groups of people. One group might be internals within an organization. So for example, what I am doing this upcoming year is I've been working with a construction company this last year, and we're taking this concept that we've been working on within the organization and doing it in-house for a select group of their employees. We're just expanding the knowledge. So that will be a performance pod, but that will be in-house. I also work with a lot of professional services firms, so like accountants, lawyers, investment advisors, who sort of like you, Heartland, like everybody's in their own world doing their own thing, and like creating that time to get out and network and meet new circles of influence would be a really powerful step towards helping them build their book of business. And then another group is just a group of leaders on the rise, leaders like you, Elaine, who are, saw themselves as like a librarian researcher, but actually realizing now that their work extends more to than just like researching and giving, the information that you find, that there's this leadership component to it of influencing and creating plans and engaging stakeholders and defining roles, which is really important. So bringing those types of people together. So in 2023, we will be launching these performance pods geared towards sort of those 3 different groups. And the way that we see it is a balance of like in person and online. What I have experienced with a lot of the peer groups that my clients have been a part of is like they can no longer afford a full day once a month. Leaders can't afford to take that much time away from their business, number one. Number two, the peer groups are very expensive. They can range from $10,000 to $15,000 a year for these groups. So we are packaging it in a way that we believe is much more palatable to people in their busy schedules, and will be more like cost competitive. So really, we're going to spend a day at the beginning in person, creating the foundation of who you are as a leader. And then we will be baking in some of these concepts like conscious leadership, which is this idea of taking radical responsibility for everything that we do and sort of looking for the win-win in situations. Whenever we hit an obstacle, it's easy for us to sort of slip below the line and think, oh, why is this happening to me, or the imposter or whatnot. But introduce some of these different concepts and frameworks that you can start using in your day-to-day businesses and your leadership to help you stay clear on what you want to achieve. So it'll be 4 90-minute training sessions and then 4 90-minute team coaching sessions and groups of 8 to 12. So you'll be connecting with other peers from non-competing businesses, not that that really applies to any of you guys at this stage, to just share. So 1 week will be training, and then 2 weeks later will be team coaching to sort of discuss what was applied, discuss what you've learned, what observations you had, and to Pam's point, have like your running group, your running team, really share with you in your wins and hold you accountable to those things that you said were important. So those are the performance pods. And really, once we get in, because it's such early stages, we've proposed Saturday, January 28th as the kickoff, but really once we sort of lock in a few more individuals and we see like maybe a Friday works, some people can take time off, we'll do it on a Friday. But this is just a starting point, and the groups will really have final say over the training topics. I really like to co-create and co-design the learning based on sort of what's showing up in that group and sort of who we have. But these have been some of the topics, like communication, learning how to communicate with different styles, Elaine, is like really, a cornerstone to good communication. And I talk about that a lot in my webinars. So that will definitely be a cornerstone of the training. So that's what we have on the books. Like that's what we have on our, in the plan for 2023 in order to help more leaders better themselves, better their leadership, achieve their goals, and do it in a way that works for their schedules, do it in a way that is, it's fun because you're meeting other people and have your little run group. Have any of you guys ever trained for a marathon with a run group before? Erin's nodding her head. Yeah, Elaine, you have too. I mean, yeah, that's what I see it is, like your success run group. I don't know. I'm not, marketing is not my strength. Heartland, if you have any feedback on the names, like feel free to share. But it's this idea that you're not going to be alone in 2023 to achieve these new objectives, and that you will have a group of peers around you to call bullshit, Erin, on something that you said that this was important at the beginning of the year, and now you're distracted with this thing over there. Like, what's that all about? Have your peers to help you do that. So why would you be a part of it? Like, what could you expect to get out of it? Is number one, cultivate this winning mindset, like really recognizing how your mindset influences your success. So ultimately, really being aware of your mindset and choosing to adopt that winning mindset that has you achieving those goals. You will learn how to communicate more effectively by knowing yourself better and understanding how to recognize people that are different than you and how to communicate with them in a way that's meaningful to them. You will know and understand what your zone of genius is. So what are your strengths? What is your purpose? What are the accountabilities and the responsibilities that really light you up? And how do you double down on those in achieving your goals? Like, quick aside here, I was talking to a business owner this morning and I hadn't spoken to her a few months, and she's drowning right now because she's trying to do everything. And when we try and do everything or be everything to everyone, we don't get anywhere. So in her situation, the first place we're going to start is revisiting what her strengths are, revisiting that zone of genius. And then you'll have your accountability group to help you create your own personal performance plan. You started mapping it out today. You got parts of it done, but to Pam's point, you probably all want a little bit more time to review and reflect. But sometimes, like, shooting from the hip isn't a bad idea either. But we'll kickstart the year by creating your personal performance plan. And then we'll be doing presentations at the end of the year in June around what you achieved and around what learnings you had, so that we can all sort of do it together. Selfishly, guys, one of the things I love about coaching is that, like, whenever I'm on a call with a client, I'm like learning stuff all the time. Like, they're paying me for the call, which is great, but I'm also like madly taking notes in the background on different topics or themes, or feel like, oh yeah, like I get that too. Okay, now focus on the client, focus on the client. So that's the gift of being a part of a group like that. Questions, comments, feedback, any thoughts so far on anything that I've talked about? Elaine, do you think something like this would be meaningful for you in 2023?
I think so.
What stood out for you about everything that I've talked about so far? Like, what's sort of standing out as interesting?
Well, I think, I mean, I kind of didn't know coming into this exactly. And I'm not a business owner, or, I mean, it's just a personal consulting. So it's like just me, and it's, all my experiences is in not-for-profit, not in corporations. So I was kind of unsure, but it seems like this is sort of something that would be good for anybody.
Yeah, we'll design the groups. We'll like curate the groups to sort of have like-minded professionals together. So if you're professional services oriented, we'll create a professional services group. I could sort of see you actually fitting in with that group. But then we have like Erin, who, if you don't mind me sharing, Erin works at TELUS. So create like a group of leaders on the rise who are making big impacts in their businesses, but looking to do more. And do you have anybody reporting to you, Erin, at this point? Yeah, how many people?
I have 30.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, great. So then I would create a group of leaders with people with direct reports to them. And then, like I said, if there's larger organizations, I know there were some other leaders that were meant to be on the call today, we'll go in and curate something specifically for their organization. Sound good? Awesome. Erin, any questions or comments so far?
I guess my question, like, I think I really see the value in this. And, you know, I just wrote down, I know you use this term, but like the like radical accountability. And I actually work really well in that model where I'm actually held accountable, because when left to my own devices, I can definitely wander. So I think this type of program would be really great for me to be able to commit to. What about cost?
Cost. I am costing it out right now at just under $3,000 for the September to June. And like I said, our coaching packages start at $6,000 for the same time period. So that's where it's at. It might go higher, but anybody that was on this call today will definitely get it. It's looking at just under $3,000 when I start. Basically, the way I calculate it is just time and planning and participants and whatnot. And I like that roughly translates to like, didn't do the math properly, but basically it's like a coaching session a month, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome. Brian, what are your sort of high level thoughts, observations on everything that we presented?
Yeah, I think I've been a part of many of these groups in my life, and hands down, they've been beneficial to me moving forward as a person, as a leader, as a husband, everything. I just pulled this book up. Marshall Goldsmith, who's like one of my favorite authors, he says the coach, which Carolyn, you're amazing at this, and I've only met you like 4 times, is the coach bridges the gap between the visionary planner. It's like, here's all the amazing things we plan to do, we're going to do, and the short-sighted doer in us, which I know I'm a short-sighted doer in many instances. So having accountability is fascinating to me, and I'll always have it no matter what, even if I am a coaching consultant. So thank you for the reminder.
Awesome. And thank you for interjecting that great quote. It's fantastic. What book is that? Did you say?
Triggers, Marshall Goldsmith's Triggers book.
Cool. Is that a newer book? No.
It is. It's one of his newest. Yes.
All right. Well, we might have to add it to the reading list for 2023.
There we go.
All right, you guys. I mean, like Ryan said, him and I have just met because we have some common interests together. But all of you, Elaine, Heartland, Aaron, and Pam, I consider you guys friends before like clients, to be honest with you. And thank you for showing up today. Thank you for sort of letting me share some of the thoughts and observations that I'm having. You know, optimizing humans to be at their best to go make a difference in the world is like really near and dear to my heart. I don't care like who you are, where you're at on your leadership journey, but like if we're going to change the world, like we all just have to agree to be better, right? Awesome. All right, you guys, feel free to stick around if you have any questions you want to ask me privately. Otherwise, thanks for sharing your lunch hour today, and hopefully we'll see you soon.